Probiotic research is a field that has changed a lot over the years. In the past, all probiotics had to be refrigerated to ensure non-activation. Then there were concerns about how much of the bacteria gets destroyed as it passes through your stomach into the intestinal tract. We were told not to take them at the same time as antibiotics. Don't take them with meals because it needed to be on an empty stomach. Well, today, I'm sharing information with you that overrides all of that. Joanie Blaxter is the national educator for Just Thrive, a company who's producing a very interesting probiotic known as Spore Biotics. Welcome to the show, Joanie.
Hey, Bryan, so lovely to be here.
Well, I really appreciate you being here today because I know you're one of my foremost experts I turn to when we're talking about Spore probiotics, because not many people know what a Spore probiotic is.
No.
So can you really start by defining what the difference is between Spore probiotics and your normal probiotics that people find on the shelf?
Oh, sure, because this is a big area of mystery for a lot of people. So it all comes down to that word spore. And spore is just a scientific way to say shell. So these are a kind of bacteria that have naturally evolved over eons to be able to have the ability, when their environment becomes unfavorable, to retreat into a shell that they create. And when they're inside that shell, they're still alive, they're just inactive. So this is a huge advantage for these kinds of bacteria. And by the way, this is not a new concept to microbiologists. Spore bacillus have been being studied for 100 years. But specifically when we're talking about probiotics, this is when the difference between spores and non-spores becomes really crucial. Because every time, and this applies to food, every time we swallow either a commercial lactobacillus or bifido-based probiotic, or we eat a lacto-fermented food like sauerkraut or yogurt, and lacto referring to the lactobacillus that caused the fermentation. So whenever we're consuming those bacteria, as soon as they hit stomach acidity, we know from third-party gastric survivability testing that they are more than 99% killed. And this is a new idea for many people on the vitamin aisle. They're not used to this concept.
That's right.
But, you have to remember that stomach acidity has approximately the same pH as battery acid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. It destroys a lot of things. Exactly.
Yep. If you were to accidentally dip your fingertips into your own stomach acidity, it would permanently remove your fingerprints. If you're planning to be a spy, now you know how to do it, okay? So it is very, very intense and destructive. And that is why consistently testing will show you that more than 99% of those very fragile bacteria are killed. And of course, the other aspects around those kinds of probiotics, they need to be refrigerated to 50 degrees. Well, hello, the inside of your body is 98.6. How is something that is so fragile that it has to be held at 50 going to be able to make it alive in your gut at 98.6? So the question then becomes automatically, well, all of us, and I still think of myself like a vitamin specialist because I spent so many years on the aisle. All of us have either taken those kinds of probiotics or sold them to people, and we know that some people, under some circumstances, do feel somewhat better. So what's the modality for how that happens if it's not because they're arriving alive and colonizing? And it turns out that when those bacteria are alive, they're making nutrients, and they store them in their exterior cell wall. So in the end, it doesn't matter whether they arrive dead or alive in your intestines. And before I started studying with this company, I used to think that the gut was kind of like a giant aquarium. And all my trillions of bacteria that lived down there were just floating around like little fishes. And then come to find out, nothing could be further from the truth.
That's right. It's not. We've learned a lot since then, right?
Yeah. So all the bacteria that live their entire life cycle inside of us have to be attached to the gut wall. That's the essence of what they mean when they talk about colonizing bacteria. They're not just alive, they're literally cemented on. So all these trillions of bacteria, they're hanging onto the gut wall, and say we eat some yogurt. And what comes down in front of them is their little dead cousins. And they look it over and they say, oh, look, there's some micronutrients I can use. And let's say you're not feeling really great. You've got a little touch of diarrhea, say. And that's happening because sitting next to your good guys on the gut wall are some bad guys, right? So the bad guys are cranking out toxins as the natural byproduct, and that causes irritation. So now your good guy sees these little dead cousins arrive. They reach out, they grab what they need. Now, hopefully, they're a little stronger. They can do better battle with the bad guys, kill them, boom. They're knocked out of the system. You feel better. So that's the basic mechanism for how the non-spore strains work. But we know from clinical studies that benefit is really only short-term immune boost only. And in contrast, the spores have been shown consistently in clinical studies, peer-reviewed, published, to bring long-term permanent change to the gut.
And truly colonize it, right? That's what its benefits about.
So here's an important differentiation point. Let's see. So I think of what goes on in the gut like the wild, wild west, down there. And all those trillions of bacteria, they are the settlers on the land. And they live out their entire life cycle. They're in one place. They don't move. And there's good guys and there's bad guys, and they're always having wars. It's all about war down there.
That's right.
Right? And the good guys are good because they improve the environment. They're like, the good organic farmers and ranchers. The bad guys are doing destruction down there, and that's why they're bad. So when we have these issues going on, now we take, say, our Just Thrive Spore probiotic. Now these guys, I think of them, they're inside that white spore shell, and I think of it like they arrive on the scene in a spaceship. It's a white spaceship. Right. The spaceship opens up, and these guys all pile out, and each one of them has like a badge on, a sheriff's badge, the white cowboy hat, and they've got a bag on either side. And on one of those bags says bad guys, and the other bag says good guys. And the second they hit our intestines, bacteria never lack for food down there. I don't care, good, bad, or different. There's always food. Mm-hmm. So they immediately start eating, and just like us, they digest the food and they naturally produce byproducts. And because these particular strains that are in Just Thrive probiotic were designed by Mother Nature to be our gut cleaners, the natural byproducts that they produce are exactly what they use in that gut cleaning process. So one of these compounds goes in the good guy bag, the other compound goes in the bad guy bag. And now they're looking around your gut and they say, oh man, there's a bad guy over there. We got to get it. And this is a huge advantage to a product that uses live microorganisms as opposed to compounds, because they can actually tell the difference between beneficial bacteria versus harmful ones. It blows my hair back every time I say that. Yeah. So, there's a bad guy over there. So they reach in the bad guy bag, scooch over on their little white horse, sit next to the bad guy, and bang, they kill it. And in that process, they are only killing harmful strains. They are not hurting beneficial. Unlike antibiotics or any kind of antimicrobial compound, which pretty much by definition is going to be killing the good guys and the bad guys.
That's right. That's right.
So they kill bad guys and only bad guys. And now they look around some more and they say, oh, look, there's a good guy. This good guy makes vitamin K2, B complex, enzymes, short chain fatty acids. The list goes on and on and on of the importance of what the beneficial bacteria make for us. So now they reach into the good guy bag, and now they do like this 180 and become a farmer, scooch over next to it and literally begin feeding fertilizer to the low populations of the beneficials. And these guys are so wicked smart that they not only increase the beneficial strains, they increase them to the exact perfect level for peak human health. And then once they get them to that level, they turn it off and go on and do other important jobs.
That is a great analogy. Great analogy, Joanie. I like that. It really is. And I want to reemphasize something too, that it's important to know that spaceship, that Spore biotic, is bypassing the stomach acid, right? It's not getting killed in the stomach like a lot of probiotics do. So you're really getting 100% straight into the GI tract? Would that be fair assessment to say?
That is fair according to clinical testing that we have done on our strains. Now, that is not true for all Spore bacillus strains.
Okay.
Test results show on average in our experience about a 40 to 50% survival rate. And the reason for the difference is that our strains come from the top Spore bacillus researcher in the world, arguably, but still, I think it's fair.
I think it's totally fair. I know who he is.
He not only has done his research and produced incredibly enhanced and effective strains, but he also, because they were his beloved babies, and he knew that the weakest link in production is at the raw material level, and getting really strong Spore bacillus strains so that they can survive stomach acidity. So he has a proprietary manufacturing process for his strains only. Mm-hmm. And all 4 of the strains in Spore bacillus Just Thrive are licensed from Dr. Simon Cutting. And that's why when you look on our ingredient label, after our strains, you will either see SC for Simon Cutting or HU for Holloway University, which is the laboratory he operates out of. And the other PS I wanted to make sure people understand is the trillions of bacteria that live in our gut are permanent residents. The Just Thrive bacteria are not. Okay. So, they come in on a white horse. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So they immediately start doing that 2-part cleanup process. They attach at the top of the intestinal tube, but then they begin slowly working their way down the entire length of that very long tube, because that gives them a huge advantage in terms of cleaning up the environment by being able to get to all kinds of hidden communities of harmful organisms and deal with them on their way out. When they get to the end, which takes them about 3 weeks, they get excreted out in the bowel movement, because from Mother Nature's perspective, the way she set up the system, they're supposed to be returned to the soil. The soil is supposed to be microbially rich with these strains as well as other strains. All plants growing on that soil are supposed to be growing chemical-free and organically. So they naturally are, as they grow up, they pull these spore strains on them. And then we're supposed to be behaving like our hunter-gatherer ancestors and gathering up these plants and consuming loads and loads of these bacteria with every mouthful, so that the cycle starts all over.
So truly the circle of life in many ways is Spore biotics. Very interesting. Very interesting. And
which gets interrupted just with the very first phase gets interrupted pressing that toilet handle.
It does. Yes, that's when you lose them again. Yeah. But the good thing is we got a company where we can take them supplementally, and that's what Just Thrive's all about. And I know you're all about the research behind it too. So tell me a little bit about the research that stands behind Spore Biotics.
Well, I can tell you at this point what I just learned from the research microbiologist is we actually have, I'm pretty sure he said 15 clinical studies And you have to understand, this is a hugely important differentiation point. Most other probiotic companies, what they do is they find research on single strains. And then based on that research, they put together kind of a kitchen sink formula, but you don't really know how all those strains are behaving in your gut in a real time perspective, because the gut is very, very complicated, and sometimes strains, once you get them into the gut, will actually antidote each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't understand the synergistic effect of them. That's right.
Exactly. Yes.
Yep. That makes total sense.
This is why we do peer-reviewed, published in reputable journals on the entire proprietary 4-strain formula. And as I said, I'm pretty sure Karen said we're now up to 15 on a whole variety of topics. And
that's right.
Yeah. And I'm happy to send you. I have a list. I'm so way behind. I have a list of 8, which I would be more than happy to send you if you want to.
Of course, I love the research on it, and
okay.
that's what I'm very happy about, is that we're finally getting all this good research to back up what we're talking about and to show we understand it better, how it's really working within the body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like you said, we grew up on the aisles of thinking, we try to throw it at you as many probiotics as we could in abundance, knowing that only a little bit would probably make it there, or is just stimulating the immune side of it, where Spore Biotics is a whole different world. It's just really creating a total environment in the GI tract. So who is this Spore Biotic for? I mean, I know we got leaky gut issues, you got ghrelin issues, you got all these different problems in the GI tract these days. Mm-hmm. Is there any particular groups of people that should be taking Spore Biotics?
Well, Kiran Krishnan, who's the research microbiologist and chief science officer for Just Thrive, and he is one of the world's experts on Spore bacillus. He absolutely is, because he's conducted over 30 clinical trials on them. He says that based on clinical outcomes, he believes that 97 to 99% of all Americans have ongoing leaky gut. So I would say you can pretty much count on anybody walking down a vitamin aisle got leaky gut.
That's right.
Now, the really key thing to remember about that, from my perspective, as somebody who spent so many years on the aisle, is that when we have ongoing inflammation of the gut lining and it stays in place for so long, and the way that happens, I should back up a little, is when we get an overgrowth of harmful bacteria living down there. There's a variety of ways that can happen. So 99% of us approximately have an overgrowth of harmful bacteria. They're finding food, they're eating it, digesting it, and their natural byproducts are irritants. So now we've got a high level of irritating compounds. It produces irritation in the gut wall. And what most people don't realize is that something like 75 to 80% of our immune receptor sites are embedded in that now very swollen, inflamed gut wall. So those irritants at that point begin to directly interfere with the proper functioning of that immune system, which is why it's so common to see autoimmune and immune and digestive problems like this. So it interferes directly with the proper functioning of your immune system, which is the point at which you could see, like, oh, God, I never had hay fever before, but now this spring.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually those irritants literally punch a hole through the gut wall. Now you've got what is a diagnosable case of leaky gut. Okay. So those toxins are leaking directly into your bloodstream. This is the point at which kind of life goes to a handbasket.
That's right. That's right.
Because once they hit the bloodstream, they are potentially being carried anywhere in the body. And wherever they land, they can potentially be stimulating an inflammatory response. And if they're carried to your brain, you're going to see mood disorders. And of course,
Yeah.
it's scientifically very well established now that there is a huge link between brain, mental, and emotional issues and the gut. Direct
In the
line
gut.
between that superhighway called the gut-brain axis, the GBA.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, there's so much great research coming out on that, and I'm just enthralled by it because they're really proving how important that when your gut is inflamed, your brain is inflamed, and you just described some of the process of how that is. And that's why it's so important to take care of leaky gut issues, our stress response, what we're eating, all these things that are driving it. So basically, how would you take a Spore biotic? Is it any different than a regular probiotic?
No. Well, yes. Sorry.
Okay.
Because the spore bacillus survive alive, you want a nice big feast waiting for them when they get down to your gut, right? You want to feed your babies because then you're going to get the highest reproduction rate and the best bang for your buck. So with Just Thrive Spore Probiotic, you do take it with food in the middle or at the end of the meal, as opposed to what we've been being told for decades about the other kind. You do it on an empty stomach. Well, that was all shenanigans. I don't want to say shenanigans.
We didn't know. We didn't
right.
know
It was people's best guess about how to try and keep them alive. You don't want food down there because that'll mess up the situation. Well, not true for the Spore bacillus strains. And I do want to say that Just Thrive is a fantastically important product to take if you know you're going to be going on an antibiotic.
Yes, very true. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the reason being that these strains have been proven, our probiotic strains have been proven to remain alive in the presence of antibiotics. Mm-hmm. And in fact, doctors abroad have actually been prescribing Spore bacillus strains for decades to be taken with the antibiotic medication at the same time because they survive. So
Joanie, I would like for you to say that one more time. You can take it with an antibiotic at the same time.
Here's the way you do it. It's so much more convenient, okay? Your doctor has prescribed you, say, a 2-week protocol. You're supposed to take your antibiotic capsule twice a day, okay? So you take your antibiotic capsule, you take your Just Right capsule, you take them both at the same time.
Exactly.
They get down to your gut at the same moment. And remember, your Just Right bacteria are alive, but they're inside that shell. And they go, man, there's a lot of poison in this environment. We're not opening up the spaceship. Yeah. Right? So they wait until enough of the antibiotic has dissipated in your body that it becomes safe. And then they open it up, they come out, and they do that whole 2-part helpful process. And what they do, and the reason they've actually been being prescribed by physicians for so many years is, antibiotics frequently stimulate a lot of gastric distress. Well, taking your Spore bacillus strains at the same time will help mitigate that.
That's right. Minimize it for sure. Yeah, totally agree with that.
So, you Just Thrive, they're doing their thing and they're reducing the inflammation and you're not getting your tummy upset the way you did the last time you took your antibiotic. And now it's the evening and it's time for you to take your next dose. If you were to only take the antibiotic without the Spore bacillus strains, it would get down to the gut. And remember, your Just Thrive bacteria have removed their protective shell. So the antibiotic hits them and kills them. Mm-hmm. That's why every time you do your antibiotic, you do your Just Thrive probiotic at the same time. You finish your 2 weeks. Now there's no more poison being introduced to your gut. And so now you do the math. So you were doing 1 antibiotic twice a day. So as soon as you finish your antibiotic, you're going to do 2 Just Thrive capsules every day with food, and you do it for just as long as you were on your antibiotic protocol. So in this case, we're looking at 2 weeks, so you're going to do a double dose for at least 2 weeks. And I always encourage people to even increase the math if they want, because, we do know now that antibiotics will kill up to 99% of all your bacteria.
That's right.
And the problem with that shotgun approach is that your beneficial bacteria are like your immune system watchdogs. So in other words, this is why we want a healthy, thriving population of these good guys, because if a bad guy appears on the horizon down there, they all talk to each other and say, oh my God, there's a bad guy, we got to get it. So your permanent beneficial residents, I'm not talking about what the spores do. These are your settlers in the Wild West. They band together, they ride out, and they attack that intruder. And if they have enough of them, they can kill it and overcome it, and then all is well. So this is why you really, for your best long-term peak health, you don't want to be killing off your beneficial bacteria.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this is why, so what I'm hearing you say, would you just use this sort of on a short-term basis? Like, you know, when I took an antibiotic or when I had a sickness or an illness of any kind, or maybe an IBS episode, is that the only time I'm really taking a spore biotic, or is this more of a maintenance type program?
It's very much a maintenance, because what you have to remember is, again, if going back to the natural cycle, we would be getting loads and loads of these bacteria every time we eat food. That's number one. Number two is basically since the late 40s, early 50s, we have been dumping huge amounts of antimicrobial chemicals into our food, into our environment in general. We've also increased our exposure to all kinds of antimicrobial heavy metals and plastics, medication, any strong chemical that we get exposure to, either by eating it, breathing it, or putting it on our skin, is going to negatively impact our beneficial gut bacteria.
That's right.
So we've not only taken these really important spore bacillus out of our natural source, which would be food, but we also have hugely increased our need for them by loading up our environment with antimicrobials.
Yeah, just being the American lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much why we all could use it to some degree.
Yeah. And the amount of bacteria in one capsule is estimated to be the minimum amount necessary to maintain an already healthy gut microbiome. Yes, and exactly. Almost nobody comes to the table with a healthy gut microbiome.
No, not at all. We're all imbalanced to some degree. I totally agree. You know, I've been using the spore biotics for a few years now, and I definitely sort of learned the hard way that with some people, you got to be careful or start them off slowly on these spore biotics because of the potency benefits that they give you. Yeah. And so it could definitely produce a detoxification issue. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. So as soon as you take that first Just Thrive cap, it's going to go down to your gut and do exactly what you want it to do, which is it's going to begin to target and kill the bad guys. When the bad guys die, their cell wall bursts open in the dying process, and those toxins that have been previously contained behind the wall, well, now you get a temporary one-time dump into your gut. So if you kill off too many too fast, you're going to feel funky. And I tell you that when I got introduced to the product, I had a lifetime history of severe gut challenges, including very severe chronic fatigue. And nobody warned me about die-off, and I spent the first 4 days in bed.
I believe it, yes.
Right? And then so temporary spike of toxins, it can overwhelm your detoxifying organs, your liver, your kidneys, your skin. And you don't want to do that. So we do suggest that the first time customer always start slower than the maintenance directions on the label. Mm-hmm. And if you've got somebody who just is, pedal to the metal, I'm sick of being sick and tired, you can suggest that instead they also take along with it the Ultimate IgG. The Ultimate IgG is 3 different forms of antibodies, and I think of those antibodies like little vacuum cleaners, right? Mm-hmm. They get down there, and their whole job through a unique lock and key mechanism is to seek out either live harmful organisms and or the toxins they leave behind. Either one.
Yep.
And once they bind it up and neutralize it, as in a die-off reaction, then it's just carried out of the system and excreted in your bowel movement. Easy cheesy.
Yeah, perfect. Great example of it. And I totally agree. I love the IgG, which I know we've done a podcast on that too. So for those of you listening today, you can check out the podcast with the IgG that you'll see on our website soon. Couple more things. Just point out, of course, this is non-refrigerated, right? It doesn't have to be refrigerated because it's all about the shell. So
can I tell you a couple of really cool stories about that?
Please.
Okay. So these bacteria have been found in the gut of a bee, fossilized in amber, that was about 30 million years old. When the researchers opened up and removed the Spore bacillus strain, they revived it. It was still alive and viable.
That is crazy. 30 million year old spore was found in a bee.
They've gone out to outer space on spaceship and survived the heat of launch and the freezing colds of outer space, still alive and viable. You can't kill these guys.
That's great. Yeah, just like you said, it just has to have the right environment for the spaceship to open, and that's what
right.
matters.
That's right. They got to be in the gut. That's their home.
And the best part is, I mean, these are soy-free, they're gluten-free. Best of all, they're dairy-free.
Dairy-free, vegan.
Those problems, vegan, they're free of everything, basically. So you don't have to worry about it with a lot of hypoallergenic type issues you would in other cases. But that's why I really love Just Thrive and what they're doing for the community. Joanie, I appreciate you being here today and all the information you brought to the table. I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Oh, so fun, Bryan. Really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healthy Approach podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you like this podcast and help us spread the word by rating and sharing with your friends and family. If you'd like to learn more about Spore Biotics from Just Thrive, go to sunflowershoppe.com. That's shop with 2 P's and an E, or visit at one of our 2 locations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.